here for the kickoff of the 2022-2023 First Thursday season. And thanks to all of you who completed the First Thursday survey. It's a huge help in determining which speakers we'll be hearing from. Today we'll be hearing about everything elections and voting in Deschutes County. It not only is the cornerstone of our democracy, as we all know, it's become a hot potato issue. Today we'll be hearing from Steve Dennison. He was appointed as interim county clerk effective July 31st, 2021, after our own league member, Nancy Blankenship, announced her retirement last spring. Nancy recommended Dennison's appointment to the Board of Commissioners. Steve, who has served as Deschutes County election supervisor since 2017, is completing the remainder of County Clerk Nancy Blankenship's term, which ends in 2022. He's running unopposed for the position of county clerk on the November ballot, and as you know, it's a nonpartisan position. Prior to joining the Deschutes County Clerk's office, Dennison worked for San Mateo County, where he managed the technical aspects of the elections office. He began his career working for an election technology vendor, election systems and software, so he knows elections from the inside out. Please welcome Steve Dennison. Yeah, you can.
Anything to keep me from passing out? Thanks, Karen. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Thanks for having me. As Karen just mentioned, I am new to this, so if I start doing this, or you see me teeter, so grab me a pillow or something, please, to break the fall. So again, yeah, my name is Steve Dennison, your Deschutes County Clerk. I was appointed a year ago. Thank you for the introduction. Covered a lot of what I was going to talk about, so now I need some filling. I'm originally from Massachusetts. Started in elections in 2001 for an elections technology vendor. Started in voter registration systems, and then worked my way toward the tabulation systems part of the process and supporting elections all over the country. Got to learn a lot of the varied systems and processes and laws throughout the country. Again, settled in California and learned a lot about California, but I'm glad to be here in Oregon, glad to be in the home of vote by mail, helping move this forward. Long lasting legacy of vote by mail, and it's not lost on me where it all started statewide here. Speaking of legacies, such a tradition of accountability, professionalism, transparency, and can keep going down the list that Nancy had set up, and Susie before her. Susie's part of the league, and as people came through, I don't know, is Susie here? No. Okay.
We're sorry, we can't help you. You guys.
Oh, you can't? I can speak up. I'm sorry. Okay, I do not have a teacher voice. Okay, I'll start over. So the county clerk's office is, we have a staff of 11 people. We do more than elections. We oversee all the real property recordings for the county. We issue marriage licenses, process passport applications. We're also the manage the board of property tax appeals. Again, staff of 11, 3 are dedicated toward elections. And I think there might have been questions about how many people does it take to manage a single election. It takes an army. With those 3 regular staff and myself, we can't do it alone. We have staff that come back election after election to help us out at the counters and issuing ballots and mailing out letters. We have the election boards. Depending on the election, I think we had somewhere in the realm of 50 in the last presidential election. But in the last May special district election, we only had 15 board members. We have teams that run around the county picking up ballots for us, teams of 2, and we typically have 2 routes. We need subs for those 2. We coordinate with other departments. We couldn't do it without our information technology department. We couldn't do it without county admin and the communications portion that they handle. We couldn't do it without facilities, setting up our signage and opening drop boxes, legal, it goes on and on. Finance obviously plays a role. I don't know, I'm forgetting a big one, but geez, hopefully this isn't being taped. Anyway, So yeah, again, it takes a lot. It's not just us, it's those seasoned people, seasoned workers and people that understand our processes that really get us through. That's the secret sauce to any elections office, not just here, but across the state, across the country. Election workers are critical. This election, you may have noticed, we have most of the measures posted on our website. There are a couple that haven't officially been filed yet, but we're gonna have 9 local measures. So in addition to the 4 that are county or statewide, we have 9. And it varies. It runs the whole gamut. There's a charter amendment over in Sisters. There's psilocybin measures across the board. There's your measure. There's a bond renewal for the school district. So there's a lot to it. So we have a lot of measures. We have a lot of contested races, Board of County Commissioners, city councils, mayors, treasurer. If you looked at our website, you would notice there are 3 candidates for treasurer too. So things are really getting interesting, and there's something for everybody this election. I think it's going to drive up turnout. We typically run right around just 70+% turnout. It's not as great as a presidential election. Of course, every election we'd love to see everybody vote. We know that's not reality, but with everything that's on the ballot this fall, I hope for very high turnout. So with that, this will be the first election we're going to hold. First general election we're going to hold with under the new district lines that were applied after redistricting this last winter. We of course had to have the primary, but this is the one where people will be elected to those districts. So being new District 5 to us, or Congressional District 5. Some dates upcoming fall. We have UOCAVA, or military and overseas ballots, will go out toward the end of this month, September 24th. Ballots to out-of-state voters follow pretty soon behind, October 10th. The last day for voters to register to vote. Anybody know?
October 16th.
You're really close.
18th.
You got it, 18th. Ballots are mailed to everybody else. We'll all receive our ballots or they're mailed out on the 19th. After that, we're going to start signature verifying everything that comes in. The real fun starts in our office when the volume really kicks up, once the drop box is open. I'm sure a lot of people don't understand really the whole path of the ballot and what happens in our office when a ballot is returned, but the first step is that we're going to run it through a mail sorter. The mail sorter takes an image of the ballot, the returned ballot envelope, and we can see that signature side on our monitor and verify each signature. And each signature is verified by human eyes. We don't use technology for that. Technology to present it, so we can see the signature that we have on file for you, and then the signature that was on your envelope, and compare the two and determine whether it's a match. And all of our staff that do that are trained through the Secretary of State's office it's a forensic handwriting specialist training. And I didn't say it before, but I'll say it now. I feel great about answering questions, so yes, please do raise your hand if I'm missing something you have.
So what are you verifying the envelope signature against?
So when you register to vote, whether you were at the DMV or you were at a voter drive and you filled out a registration card, we have each one of those pieces of correspondence on file, and we're going to look at the most recent signature that we have. If that doesn't match, we'll look at anything else that we have on file for you. If we can't still find a match, we'll mail you a letter. And I was going to get to that in a second too, but I saw a couple other hands.
How about your success rate with that?
Good
That
question.
seems so controversial.
Good question. It's as far as success rate, again, Oregon having voted by mail for such a long time, our rolls are put pretty clean. Voters tend to know. If you got a letter last election, you cleaned it up and now you understand. Some people just have that signature and it varies. It's nice when they have it locked in, but of course the signatures evolve. For a young person and really at any part in life, might break your arm or have carpal tunnel, you might have a cast on. But the rate that you might have asked, the rate of challenges varies. It varies on the type of election. Ironically, it's a smaller turnout election that the challenge rate is lighter. And that's probably because those are more frequent voters. Those are voters that vote every time. The people that are going to call this fall and say, "Well, I vote every time." Well, Mr. Johnson, okay, sure, but he doesn't.
Notify them before,
So
so they have a chance.
We notify a voter as soon as we find out that it doesn't match. We'll send a letter. The voters have until 21 days after election day to resolve that. As far as percentages, it runs probably 2-3% challenged, but then the rate of return of people resolving those cuts it about in half. So we have about 1.5% that remain unresolved, and then those voters are inactivated and will need to take action to reactivate. Sorry, hands popping up.
Is there a recommendation, I don't know anybody whose signature doesn't change, right, over time. And so is there any kind of recommendation about how, many years go by before you like redo your signature? Is that something?
There's no hard deadline, and we certainly can't ask, but every update really helps. You know, it's great when somebody comes in and we haven't seen them in 20 years and they provide a new registration card, because we do have an update. The amazing ones are the ones that registered, you know, we've had their signature since the 80s and it hasn't varied. It's incredible. I've seen, you know, it happens. But that, you know, we understand they evolve, but we're looking for key components, key pieces of your signature, and we can oftentimes recognize even as your signature changes. But then we also have a proactive approach in that I can tell that that was your signature. I can see that it's really starting to change or vary. I do believe it's you. We're going to mail you a letter saying, hey, we think your signature might be changing, or we haven't had an update in a while. Please provide an update.
Yeah, I think Mamie told me once that she was called about, she was a volunteer for voting and
In
she,
2020,
yeah, and she made calls, is this correct, to?
I got a list of 40 names of people whose signatures didn't match, and I called them all. And I think there was a whole crowd of people who did that. That's a really cool thing to volunteer
Yeah,
to
so
do.
is that something you still offer?
That wouldn't have been through us.
Oh, so that's
As of right now, we don't have a phone bank that proactively calls or emails voters to tell them that. Our only correspondence is a letter. But others do it. But in fact, you might not know this too. If you register online or you update online and you provide us with a phone number, we're not entering that in. We're not statutorily, we don't have to. Yeah, we don't. So yeah, it's on the image that's on the voter's file. But if we enter an email or a phone number for a voter that really you just filled out a card, you didn't intend on being spammed by a campaign or some other group that ultimately winds up with this data. So those phone numbers likely came from another source. It could have been a party.
I think it was a party.
Yeah, the parties will take our data. They'll probably get it from the Secretary of State's office. They can get it from us. And voter data is it's public information, but they'll also cobble that together, I believe, with some other data from other sources, and that's ultimately how they get those phone numbers. Because we have some that we haven't redacted out, but the large majority do not have them. We do not have them. Yes. So yeah, that was a good segue. I was going to talk about that 21 days challenge period. And then it's just other key dates. About a week, just over a week before the election, we'll start bringing our election boards in to start processing ballots. What they're doing is they're pulling ballots out of ballot return envelopes, making sure that there's just one ballot in it. It's not zero. It's not more than one. It's not a utility bill. You'd be really surprised. And that's how we find out that our election cycle overlaps with a utility company or a union or something like that. So once they pull the ballot out, ensure that it's just one, those ballots are moved forward to tabulation. We start scanning those ballots and we release the results after 8 o'clock on election night. And we'll have a schedule posted on there so everybody will know exactly what times or the dates and times that results will be posted after election night. It's a little more frequent than it used to be.
I'm curious about the workers that you have. Do you need volunteers, or are the volunteers
Yeah.
verified in any way, or because you're looking at a group of people who might be able to help if need be.
The question is, do we need volunteers? And if so, how do we vet them too? Maybe that would have been the second part of the question. We always need help. Not volunteers necessarily, not necessarily because we pay our election workers not a lot. Nobody's getting rich off it. We appreciate them coming in, but we pay minimum wage. But they do it because they want to and like to. And Nancy and Susie have had a great pool of workers that have come back election after election, tried and true, know our processes, are reliable. So again, being new to it, I've only had this one election that I've been here without Nancy managing that part of the process, but I pulled in the people that have done it before. This November, we're gonna need more. We've had a lot of people raising their hands from all over the county, which is fantastic. We can't take every person that volunteers, so I'm still working on staffing and determining how many we need, how many are willing to come back of our, long-term people, and how many new ones are we gonna pull in. And I have a short list for those because they've been calling since the spring, or, since, last election, but we didn't need anybody then, and anyway. But yeah, great to have volunteers, or people raising their hand and being engaged and wanting to be part of the process.
Do you have to have a certain number of Republicans, a certain number of Democrats, and a certain number of independent voters working during that time?
Good question. In the state of Oregon, there's no requirement as to how many of each party, but there is a requirement that our boards be alternating parties. So, of course, a nonpartisan is a nice person that can kind of fit anywhere, but we couldn't have 2 Republicans or 2 Democrats being the sole members of a single board. So a board being a couple of people that sit at a table and remove ballots out of the envelopes. So, and flatten things out and count and check.
How do you vet them?
That's a good question too. It's something that I'm trying to work on. Prior to me, Nancy did, and she would interview each one, and that's something that I'm trying to formalize a little bit more with an application and polling different counties around the state. Everybody has a different way of vetting. Some people use recruiting agencies. Some people, just know by word of mouth. And ultimately, though, anybody that we do bring in is run through a background check and goes through our HR. So it's a full background check like any county employee.
And are you looking at social media?
I try not to. Oh, that's a good question. I haven't, like I said, I haven't technically brought anybody new on yet, but yeah, I definitely need to know who these people are and where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Sir?
Up until recently, the way elections were run really wasn't a big question. It's been challenged now. I'm just wondering, what are the safeguards that you use against people trying to submit a ballot for somebody who's no longer living, or other things, somebody out of the district? Do you have ways? I'm not sure that we have big questions about your domain, but they are across the country, a lot of places, a lot of challenges.
Sure, yeah. I mean, elections are challenging no matter where they are and who's conducting them and what the rules and laws are. They're challenging here, but just to answer a couple of your questions, the way first of all, our voter rolls are fluid. We're constantly updating voter information. If you moved and you provided information to the DMV, that information might be provided to us that you did that. If you let us know directly that you've moved or you want to change your party, we're going to update that accordingly, right? Every single day we're updating voter registration information. We receive information from the post office that you've moved or you moved out of state, and we'll take action accordingly. We update information based on other sources like this multi-state consortium called ERIC, and that helps us with people that have moved across state lines, people have passed away, maybe moved away, we hadn't heard about, they didn't notify us directly, so they were still sitting on our rolls. We find out through ERIC that they've gone, or maybe even passed. So a lot of ways we update as far as, and that's right up to the date. And then the one that's not very much fun is we actually, we comb through the local obituaries daily. So it will find anybody that's kind of slipped between the tracks, slipped through the cracks, and we haven't found out through county health or state health records and things like that, or other sources. So a lot of different sources feed in. We're constantly updating. Bottom line is, if you're registered to vote, when we mail ballots, you're active, you're in the county, we're gonna send you a ballot. The ballot comes back to us as undeliverable, or any piece of mail that we send to you comes back as undeliverable, we're gonna inactivate your record and then wait for a response from you from a confirmation card. But that ballot we sent to you, again, as I mentioned, we verify that you are you based on your signature. And as of right now, in this day and age, that's what we have. And if it's not, if it's challenged, then that's the other process.
Do you still use observers from different parties and stuff?
So I don't proactively call for observers. I'll manage anybody that comes through the office, we suggest people go to their parties. If they want to observe, anybody here wants to observe, go to your local party, raise your hand, because the parties do a really good job of covering schedules, you know.
Yeah, like they have one of each party here.
Well, the parties themselves will do it. You know, I'll tell you, last election, there wasn't as much interest from one party as the other, and one party we had a lot of observers. So. But in this election, I anticipate both. You know, our process is open. Our doors are open. Our doors are open now. If any of you came to the counter right now and asked for a look around or to schedule something, I'd take you anytime. So our door, you've seen it. Yeah, our doors are always open. Doesn't change during the election cycle. It's just easier to schedule through the parties themselves. Happy to have people that don't want to affiliate or just want to kind of come independently of any other group. But that's a little trickier too. I mean, but we only have so much space too. You know, we can kind of welcome 2 from each party and maybe somebody else too for any given duration. But we go through an observer training. Sorry, I'm really rambling about observers. We have an observer training too that we conduct leading up to the election, and I do invite the parties to those, and anybody else is welcome to come and watch or participate. But basically outlining the parts that are observable, which is everything, but then key dates, things that I've spoke about here, the dates that observers might be more interested.
We've been reading a lot about successful voter fraud in the United States, and my question is two-pronged. One is relative to Oregon. So, for example, we've been hearing a lot about the woman who's in charge of elections in Clackamas County and her shenanigans, and that's on the Oregon level. And then, of course, on the federal level, we've been hearing a lot about Trump's lawyer, Sidney Powell, who successfully got a group of people together to infiltrate and look at software for voting machines. And then of course the other types of voter fraud like that you see in elections office in other states. Can you comment on what kind of safeguards does Oregon have, not just Deschutes County, but Oregon? Is there a group of election officials like yourself who look for and manage this? And do they discuss the election fraud that we're seeing, like people like Sidney Powell on the federal level?
I can't speak to any situation about Sidney Powell or anybody else. I really, honestly, and certainly anything else going on in other states or fraud. But generally, I can talk about what I know here in Oregon, and most specifically Deschutes County. I really can't. So we're all following the same laws, rules here in Oregon. Interpretation could be slightly different, but we're all following the same laws. So we generally should be doing things about the same. There are different voting systems here in the state. There are 3 certified voting systems within the state. It's up to each county to decide which one works for them. So that's something that differs. The sizes of the elections or the clerk's offices vary greatly. Some counties don't have sorting. Many counties don't have ballot sorters as we do. Each county is different. That's the bottom line. As far as voter fraud goes, the state did put up a nice elections integrity page. I think it was last fall, maybe they launched it. It addresses things about fraud and other situations. Boy, I wish I had this statistic in my head. I had it before we really started ramping up for this election, but it was something like, I think the survey started over the last 20 years, I think there might have been 38 instances of fraud. It represents like 19 million ballots or something to that effect here in the state of Oregon. It's small, I'll tell you. So
Actually,
yeah.
My definition of voter fraud is broader than someone who's not a legitimate signature, for example.
Yeah.
You're thinking of
Shenanigans of
election
election
fraud.
officials, or attempting to not allow vote by mail, or
That's
those kinds
election
of things
fraud.
are also voter fraud.
You're talking about election fraud.
Election fraud.
Yeah, that's what
Election
that's
fraud, election fraud more so. I understand there are groups out there trying to, not everybody's a fan of voting machines or any technology related to it. I'll tell you, we rely on it. That's how you're getting results at 8:05.
Yeah.
That's how you know what the bigger picture is at right after.
You control the machine in the office.
That's a great question too. So the securities, and I can't get too much into security of our election system. I'll talk about everything. I'll talk about anything I know or tell you what I don't, and happy to answer questions later. But some portions of our security, can't really speak about, because so we file a security plan with the Secretary of State's office annually. We outline all of our contingencies and pieces of security that are in place. That's not subject to disclosure, but I will say that our voting systems across Oregon, any tally system, any vote tally system, and the scanners that are a part of that are not connected to our county networks, the internet. They're all tied together and can only talk to one another as the system goes. So there is that. It's considered an air gap. We have card key systems, surveillance or camera systems, limited access. Lots of checks and balances to make sure that our voting system is isolated entirely and secure.
Good.
Oh, sorry. Wait, I'll come back.
I have a different topic.
Yeah.
So when you get a ballot in, you can count it right then, you don't have to wait till election day. And then on election day, if you haven't received it by then, that's it. You don't count them if they come in late or.
Good questions too. So the law did just change last year. I think it went into effect technically this year. That upon receipt, we can open a ballot return envelope, and the term count, it's kind of a misnomer. We can extract that. So if we decided to bring our boards in on day one for one ballot, extract the ballot, verify the signature, extract the ballot, scan the ballot. That's all, we can do that. So the system itself is counting, it's tabulating, but I can't see the results until after 8 o'clock on election night. The system won't allow me to. Yeah. So that was a good question, and I'm sorry, your second question.
So if a ballot comes in.
Oh, on
the
election
day
day.
after, but it was mailed properly, can you count it?
Yeah, another good question. You guys get into that, but yeah, postmarks now do count. So our ballot drop boxes still close at 8 p.m. on election night. You put it in a drop box, that's a guarantee it's going from your hand directly to ours. The legislative change that allows for postmarks to count, if we receive a ballot up to 7 days after election day and it's postmarked on or before election day, we can count it. If we receive it 7 days after election day and there's no postmark, we count it. If it has a postmark, if we receive it after 7 days and it has a postmark after election day, we can't count that. So, and we have to look at each one of those. So suggestion is, if you're mailing it, if you're out of state, maybe, that's about the only scenario that I would see somebody trying to do this. The postmark rule really helps people, it enfranchises people, it allows for another method, so we can count ballots as we receive them. But again, the guarantee, once you put it in another entity's hands, I trust the post office wholeheartedly. But I trust also that when you put a ballot in a drop box for any county clerk around the state, that is going from your hands to ours. So, but if you're out of state of something, or if you're out of state or traveling and you didn't get it in, before you mail it from that post office afar, bring it to the counter and have it hand punched with that. Make sure you see that happen.
The post office is a little slower these days, if you haven't noticed.
Yeah, it's a great partnership. We couldn't do vote by mail without them, but yeah. So I would just say, our drop boxes work as well.
Yeah, so on the postal thing, I when I was gathering signatures for that measure that we talked about earlier, I had a gentleman tell me that he was really upset about voting because this was after the May election, and he had turned in his ballot early on, and, what he said was he got his ballot 2 weeks after the election. So he couldn't vote.
I think that might have been a part of another question, and I'm sorry, Dan, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. So my question to you is, on that topic, did you hear a rumor or anything was there any other, not rumor, was there any other complaints from, this is the only person I ever heard that got his ballot 2 weeks after the election.
We hear it's every election, and because it's the postal system as well, every election we're gonna have somebody calling and saying, I haven't got my ballot. I haven't received my ballot. What we suggest is, so when we mail them out on October 19th, if you don't receive it by that following Wednesday, give us a call. level of responsibility too for everybody. We all have a responsibility here. And if you don't have your ballot in your hand before 8 p.m. on election night, I'd be making some phone calls. I wouldn't wait till 2 weeks after to say, oh gee, I missed that one. There's gonna be a lot of signage out there this November. I don't think many people will miss that there's an election happening. Yeah, I just hope that they reach out to us. They can come to the counter and pick one up. We can mail them a replacement. I'll bring it to the house.
Do you put a statement like that in the news or?
Yeah, we do. We release that. If voters don't receive their ballot a week after election day, give us a call. It won't help you.
Week after election?
Oh, not election day. Geez Louise, 2 weeks after election day. A week after the ballots go out. So I'm sorry. October 26th. I beg your pardon. That's embarrassing.
I have a question, it's related to registration as opposed to the voting.
Yeah.
When we go out and hand out voter registration cards, the person can take it home and fill it out and mail it, or we say you can give it to us. Now, how reliable is that? People collecting registration cards? I don't know if there are any rules about that.
There are. So when you come to the counter and you say, I'd like 50 registration cards, or 500. We can only give out 500 in a year. I think somebody might know
I've
about
already
that.
hit that.
Yeah. when you come to our counter and say, I'm going to do a voting drive, I'm going to do something at my church or my kid's school or something like that. You do have a responsibility, and we give you a little flyer that outlines the do's and don'ts. One of the biggest pieces of that is making sure that, because if you accept a registration card, that you turn it into us within 5 days of receipt.
Okay.
So that's your responsibility. There are a lot of other little things in there too, but that's the big one.
Can anyone do that? I mean,
Anybody can. We're gonna have you fill out a little form saying that we gave it to you and on what date, and that's just for tracking purposes, but, yeah.
I have a question about voter demographics. I wondered, what are the demographics of overall of registered voters in Deschutes County? What percentage of registered voters are from diverse demographic groups within the county? And then what is done to assure that registered voters from diverse communities are actually voting?
Good questions too. These are all good questions. Just throw this all out the window. I don't need any of that. Because that was not on the list. We don't, so I know demographics more so. The only demographic that I can track would be party affiliation and age.
Okay.
You know, of course by precinct or by area as well. And as far as ensuring that other demographics vote, it's something that's on my list to do. And making sure that we're reaching people and that people do know about the election. But we're not tracking it, so right now, I don't really have a great answer for that part. But we do. I have party demographic and age. Really is about the biggest breakdown we have. So, and you were next.
I think we all wish that every state was vote by mail, at least that's how I feel. But I'm curious if your office gets calls from other states, since Oregon's really the premier first state that if anybody's doing it right, it would be us, I would think. Do you get calls from other states, or do you proactively?
So a couple of pieces there. We are part of a state association of county clerks, county clerks. There are bigger associations nationally, at the national level, and I know that certain clerks within the state are part of that and very active. So the word of vote by mail is being passed. That's one thing, and then as far as other states calling, I know they did in 2020. I might have spoken with one person, but if somebody called, they would have spoken with Nancy, and I know other counties were getting calls because these poor other states that are trying to conduct an election during a pandemic and pivoting to vote by mail at the time on the fly.
Or a state with 2 drop boxes in the whole state.
Without the technology, without the understanding, the know-how, the processes and procedures and law in place, without that relationship that has been honed here in Oregon over the last 20 plus years with the USPS, without all that in place, I couldn't imagine. Oops.
Hello.
That's it. Is that 1 o'clock? Is that how it ends? I don't know how this ends. Without all those pieces in place, for instance, when the state moved to prepaid postage a couple of years ago, prepaying for any ballot cast. So if you mail it back, the state's paying for that. Every county in Oregon needed to, every one of the 36 counties had to redesign their envelopes.
Yeah.
We had to do it again just recently because the attestation changed a little bit for this postmark rule. But every time we do that, it takes months with coordination with the USPS to ensure that our envelopes are compliant and not going to be looper mail. Like you mail your ballot to us and then it comes back to you in the mail. Things like that happen. But it's just the point being, for a state that's as experienced with this as we are, the fact that it took 6 months for that to happen. So these states that were trying to go to vote by mail on the fly, they should be reaching out to the states that know. And other states are good at it too. You know, again, having worked in California, we process vote by mail and voting centers and polling places. The vote by mail was the biggest piece. We had the most ballots cast. I mean, the technology that we utilized was the same things we're using here now, but we've been using it there longer. So there's all these lessons learned that even at non-vote, and that was before California went all vote by mail. They're not all. They still have voting centers. So that's the bottom line is we can call other states too. We all have something to learn. We're not perfect.
Yeah.
You know, systems evolve. You know, processes, procedures are constantly being perfected. We're not ever really perfected, but we're working on them. We're going to learn something here in November. I don't know what it is yet. But there will be a lesson learned here in the state of Oregon. But I say, doggone it. And it might be another vote by mail state that gets it first. And it says, oh yeah, we've been doing that a long time. Sorry, there was a question in the back.
Well, we have such a homeless population here. If somebody doesn't have an address or, you know, and they lose it, how does that affect their ability to vote?
So, being an attestation state, right? You're signing when you register to vote that you are at least 16. You can't vote at 16, but you can pre-register. But you're going to be 18 by election day. That you are a U.S. citizen. You're signing to attest that. You're signing to attest that you live at this address. And if you're homeless, we still want you to vote, but we have to put you in a precinct. We need to know where you vote. What do you qualify for? So just peeling it back that way and asking the voter, where do you rest your head at night? That's really what I need to know. If you're in the National Forest, here's a map. Give me a pin. Show me. Then you're in precinct 38, whatever it is. Then you're qualified, not to vote on City of Bend things because you're residing outside. But if you're on the corner of, wherever, Second and Greenwood, smack dab in the middle, yeah, you're eligible to vote. That's where you rest your head at night. And, and you can use anything as your mailing address. Some voters even use our address and they'll come pick it up.
When we register voters though, and they ask about, if they say they don't have an address, we just tell them, at least I've been told, we just tell them wherever you get your mail.
So you can't, unless you're sleeping behind the postal connection, that you don't live there, right? I'm not being flippant, but it's true. So where do you rest your head at night is really what we need to get at. Okay. Somebody might use a shelter for their mailing address, and a lot of shelters will accept it.
Address. They don't.
We need to know where they rest their head at night. Is the easiest way to say it.
Just
True.
give them cross streets.
Cross streets work great.
Cross streets.
Okay.
Yep. In the back.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I have a very broad
Good
question
to
for you here, something different, not just local.
Okay.
Because you've been in elections, working election relatedly for 20 years, correct? So
Correct.
you've been reading and listening and so forth and exchanging information. So here's the question. Do you think there's any hope or any trend that elections will be controlled at the federal level instead of the state level? And what would that involve? Would it be a constitutional amendment?
I honestly don't know, and it would be a constitutional amendment, I'm sure. And so there's a few different schools of thought on that. But if you just take it from this level, right now we're varied, as I mentioned, in the state of Oregon and how we conduct and what we conduct and the technology we use. One benefit of that is that makes us a lot harder to pinpoint by bad actors. Mm-hmm. If we're all one flavor nationwide, then we're still following federal law. We still are, but the variations in the processes, procedures, and local law that we follow, I think is also a benefit to us.
And what is the hope of mandatory voting?
What?
Like Australia?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's great.
yeah,
You'll get fined if you don't vote.
Yeah, I would like everybody that's qualified to vote, registered,
A lot of countries do that.
be registered to vote and participate. But as of right now, the way our system is, it is up to you. It's up to you to participate if you choose to. Sorry. Terry keeps skipping. Sorry.
I've been voting here for a while, and every time I put my vote in one of the drop boxes, I'm worried, because nobody's there. And then, one time I saw two guys come up and empty the box, and I was worried. I thought,
Yeah.
what if somebody gets their schedule and shows up at that moment and is a bad guy and, inflicts some kind of violence? So, do y'all think about that?
Having to secure it,
Again, that's part of our security plan, but we don't disclose the time that our guys are going out there and collecting. We try to have them as identifiable as possible. In fact, that's something that I'm still working on right now.
Go to vote 411 right after you put your ballot in a box, and it'll tell you whether it's been counted or not. You can also go to the Secretary of State website, My Vote, and it'll tell you whether your vote was picked up and whether it was counted. If it isn't, call.
Yeah, right. It's just not instant. It's not
So
instant.
the concern-
But yeah, sorry. Jerry, I'm sorry. Sure.
I thought I heard you say that even if ballots are received after election day, that they still count within that 7 days?
If they were mailed, yeah.
If they're,
Yeah,
are
yeah.
you still emptying the drop boxes?
No. They're still closing at 8 p.m. on election night as they traditionally have. Always have.
So, okay. And are they locked? I would
Yes,
assume they're
yeah,
locked.
yeah. There won't be, at that point, they're closed, emptied. We have a sheriff's deputy on site there to make sure that, the last person in line gets the vote. If there's a, queue of cars and things like that they ensure that everyone ensures that the ballot, the drop boxes are emptied. And that once they're locked up, we won't open them up until the next election.
So is that, now that we have this extension for mail, is there something on the box that says after 8 p.m. on election day, don't put your ballot in here? I mean,
It's gonna be locked. So, we say that it closes at 8 p.m. on
and
election.
so you can't open it?
You can't open it.
Oh,
yeah.
oh, okay,
Yeah, it's not
okay.
open that box. Sorry. Yeah. Did you have,
Because it's so controversial nationwide, these boxes, and they're getting recalled and so on.
I trust our systems, I trust our policies, procedures, I trust our people. I mean, I trust our ballot boxes, as I just mentioned. I said, from your hand to ours, and that is the system that we have in place. I can't take it from you over the counter. I'm not going to accept it. You have to cast your own ballot.
Nobody's worried they can go do the one on the building, and put it in the building.
That one's closed.
Oh.
So we closed that a couple of years ago when we added the drive-through outside of our building.
Yeah, okay.
And security too. It's bigger. It's isolated. It's not connected to the building. Sneak preview too. This is on here. I have a couple of plugs. Sorry. Sneak peek. We're going to the drive-through drop box outside our building at Deschutes Center. If you walk up or bike up, you're kind of in the middle of the road too, and we see all kinds of weird scenarios where people are awkwardly cutting off cars and things. We're gonna add a small drop box on the sidewalk on the hillside of it. Yeah, so for a little safer for somebody to walk or bike up to. We're also gonna add a drop box up in Redmond. This one, so county doesn't have enough property or key property, the ones that fit well for drop boxes to be able to do this ourselves. We partner well with the libraries, Park and Rec, cities, and of course the county itself. So we're gonna put this at the fairgrounds. So, yeah. So we don't need to worry about, so something that's happening up in Redmond is that they'll be tearing down that library and rebuilding the library. So we'll be displaced for a little while up in Redmond. And outside of that drop box at County Center, at the Deschutes County Services Building, outside of that, Redmond's our second most widely utilized drop box. So we need more out there anyway. So the fairgrounds is gonna help, and then we might be able to get one up in north.
Is there security camera on these?
So cameras are a question that I get a lot. That's part of our security plan. So it's not subject to disclosure, so.
What's the percentage of how many voters use drop boxes as opposed to putting them in the mail? And all those envelopes that have postage paid, the ones that go in drop boxes, did you have to pay?
No, they didn't,
That doesn't-
the post office counts the ones that go through the
That go
mail,
through,
so
yeah,
they're
that
the ones
makes
that are gonna
sense.
bill, not us, but the state, so yeah, they have their checks.
What's the,
I wish I
know?
knew. I don't know. You got me. That's okay. I guess I should go. We still get the majority by mail.
Oh.
Yeah, more than drop boxes, but
Okay.
I'm gonna have to get my head around that, because that would be the last time somebody asked me that.
For example, in a retirement home, where people aren't so mobile and making it, is it illegal in Oregon for someone to gather up a bunch of people and then turn it in?
No,
But it's illegal perhaps in other states?
Yes.
perhaps. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not illegal here. So somebody can come in, you can collect all the ballots from your family and bring them in, or drop them in any drop box, or put them in the mailbox. It's not illegal.
I'm sorry, I'm full of questions.
No, it's good.
I don't know, I have heard that there's some sort of state law about putting up political signs, supposed to be after Labor Day. Does that have anything to do with the elections?
It does, however, I'm not the one policing that. So the signage, political signage, we have a little link on our website that points you in the direction of whichever entity is in charge of the area that you're concerned about. If it's within the city limits, you call the city. If it's, we call it, there is county property, you call the county, but not us. I'm not the one doing that.
But it is a rule?
It is.
After Labor Day?
I should know that
It's
exact
not-
date too. It's not Labor Day, it's not a hard Labor Day.
It's
9/9.
you can put out the signs on your property.
Yeah, that's true.
9/9.
That's true. That's true. Couple other pieces. I don't know, how are we doing on time?
It is 12:49.
Oh, wow. Oh, we're good. The only reason I asked, and I'm not trying to rush out of here, believe me, and I would stay after too and answer other questions, even one-on-one. Today's a filing deadline in our office, and we're short-staffed. So we have two of our elections folks out, and I've left one. She's staying, she normally goes to lunch at noon, but she's gonna wait till I get back, or closer to when I get back. So filing deadline being, today's the deadline for candidates that file with our office to file their voters pamphlet statement. So, city and Department of Agriculture candidates have until the 12th. You were early. So just a couple other pieces. Last election, we discontinued using the optional secrecy sleeve, that blue secrecy sleeve. That was the first election we did that. The state, Secretary of State reviews each request, and we put in the request, and they authorize us to stop using it. Again, it was optional, always been optional. What we did, you probably noticed in May, but we added that secrecy weave, like a banker's envelope on the inside of the ballot return envelope to help maintain that voter privacy. But I'll tell you, it saved us money and materials, the paper's a premium, and it also saved us at the election boards when pulling ballots out at the tables. It's one less step, so our throughput is greater, which is important. And then there's even a couple of voters that sent their ballot back with this sleeve. I don't know where those were. Sitting in I know how I handle my mail, and thank goodness for my wife, but because my mail was sitting, that could happen. But was anybody here? Because there was two. No, it happened, so it was interesting. But they'll use different other things. But we put a little insert in there too to let voters know that this is intentional. It's not missing from your packet. Something that we've done away with, and we're going to add that note back in there again this election, because so many people did not participate in May. We should have hopefully twice as many here in November, and they didn't get that memo because they didn't vote.
So is it just in Deschutes County that this has been done?
Good, yeah, great question. It's not. So we weren't the first one to do it. Multnomah had started, and other counties that had recall elections and other special elections before. And then in May, many counties were starting to go away from it. And again, being the new guy, sounds like a great idea. So anyway, we save money, and I don't anticipate us going back unless the state changes the rule to say that it's mandated again.
Is there a rule about, if you don't vote for 20 years and then you show up to vote, Is there any time limit that if somebody doesn't vote for a long time?
There's, not right now. It was 5 years, sitting as inactive, and then 10 years, and now I don't even know if it's that, to be honest, because the rule changed, and I would have to double check, but I don't think so. So if you're inactive, if you went to Cabo San Lucas last year during the election, and your ballot came back to us as undeliverable, you wouldn't have known. You just knew you didn't vote, maybe didn't care. You don't know you were inactive unless you received that confirmation card from us and returned it. But you might have ignored that in the same stack of mail that had your old ballot in it. So that sleeve. But so you're still inactive. You're not going to get a ballot in a couple, here in a few weeks. You're going to wait. You might wait right up until election day and say, "Gee, I never got it." You can come to our office as long as you're only inactive, not canceled. You didn't tell us you were moving to Cabo, but you're canceled, or you're only inactive. You can re-register at our counter right there up until 8 o'clock on election night. So you can do that. Our voter rolls of inactives are spread quite large. So we have a lot of inactives there. Sir?
How are the votes counted? You run it through a machine. When Nancy was here to talk to us 6 years ago or whatever it was, she said that she called the results in to the state. Do you still do that, or do you do something different?
I used to have to do that in California too. Thank goodness I don't right now. I do not have to. We do not do that. So what we do, once we scan the ballots, tabulate the ballots, after 8 o'clock, run our reports.
Run through a machine.
We run them through the scanners, print out the reports. We have hard copies of the reports, and then we're also going to take a file that we can upload to our own election night reporting system here in the county. And then we also upload to the state's election night reporting system. So we have duplicate.
Yes, an independent system from the internet. You're not calling in. You're doing.
We no longer need to call in. Yeah, I can confirm that.
On that, you just mentioned an inactive list.
Yes.
Is that a list that someone can purchase or not purchase if you're nonprofit and nonpartisan?
Yep.
And you could maybe make calls to these inactive voters and say, hey, you're not gonna get your ballot.
You could.
That's a really good idea, because he says there's a lot of them.
There are a lot of them. Have them update early, will you? Don't have them wait until that 8 o'clock thing on election night. Let's beat that by weeks. Send them now. But it is. And actually, another legislative change that went into effect we have to do this year, starting this year, is anybody we've been inactivated due to a signature not matching or a name change. So after an election, if your signature doesn't match or your name was changed and you don't respond to us, your ballot wasn't counted, you're inactivated. We're going to send you that confirmation card. But now we're required to send a letter before each election to these voters saying, "Hey, you're inactive.
Nice.
Do you want to, and here's a registration card." We in fact, they went in the mail yesterday. We sent 1,500 of them.
Wow.
Yeah, so,
In
Deschutes County.
And I'm sorry, follow-up question, but you just said those inactive ones are just these two kinds, where it's, so the guy that went to Cabo and just missed an election, that
Yep.
would not be in
Not
part of that.
not that group. His group is undeliverable ballot.
Yeah.
We have also undeliverable mail. There are a lot of inactive categories. But yeah, the only one we're required to continually outreach to are those ones that were inactivated due to a signature challenge.
Okay.
And name change. Sorry.
So I am new here. I left here 4 years ago and turned in my card.
Okay.
So now I'm not registered, and I understand I can do it online, but how would the signature be done online?
You can do that with me before we leave.
Okay.
That's a safer bet. You can, and it depends on whether the state's system still has that signature from the DMV or not. But I don't know that it does because you proactively said cancel me. So your best bet.
I have my driver's license.
Oh, which is great. But yeah. So maybe it will. Maybe you can try it online, test it out. You'll know right away. It'll say you need to print this out and sign it, or your registration was accepted.
Okay.
So, but
because if you did one of those things that, with automatic sign, it looks like,
yeah,
you'll never be able to.
those are terrible, and that's the problem with the DMV. To be honest, people signing up at the DMV, the signature on the back of your driver's license.
Yeah.
it's not, you know, how close is that to your signature? Those keypads aren't always the best, and you don't know what that's going to affect down the road. I'm signing this, so my ballot will be counted in the future. Maybe not what you're thinking when you're trying to get your Oregon driver's license. So, Mimi's probably the most direct way. Filling out a new registration card and giving to somebody that you know is going to get it to us, or mailing it in, or bringing it to our counter. That's a surefire way of knowing that you're registered to vote. And I'm sorry, just one other little thing too. As you register at the DMV through motor voter, so you do a qualifying transaction, there is a 21-day lead time. So coming up soon, if you go to the DMV to register, if you're new here, it might be too late. And not all, and even though we do outreach with the DMVs to make sure that they understand, and their clerks are telling voters, the voter might expect when they're at that counter that was the effective date. It's not. And then we're left with a person at the counter literally in tears wanting to vote, and I can't issue a ballot. We could issue a provisional ballot, but if they didn't proactively fill out a registration card on their own before the registration deadline, if they're caught in that 21 days, then it's an unfortunate situation. Something that, you know, a little pet peeve.
So that's like September 27th. Anybody that gets a driver's license. So those of us, and there's a bunch of you in here who are doing voter registration, we have to remember to tell people that. That's a good thing to know.
Yeah, so, motor voters.
When you give the statistics about what percentage of people, registered voters, vote, that includes those inactive voters also?
Does not.
They are not.
It's active. It's active. So if you look at our results right now on our website,
It's active.
it's active voters at that time, basically at the time of certification.
So it's really worse than it sounds.
The turnout percentage. Well, those inactive voters, they're ones, maybe they didn't want to register in the first place. Maybe they did go through motor voter, and then they received something from us and they came back and they said, well, I didn't care about it anyway. Again, it's up to the voter to re-up, to come back and say, hey, I didn't get my ballot. I want to, and I see the point about reaching out to them. That's a fantastic idea if you have the bandwidth. But a lot of those voters, probably inactive for a reason. Another change we had to do a reach back last year or earlier this year, to voters that had been inactivated because they were inactive for 10 plus years, and reactivate them. Well, how do you think that went? Yeah, I've been inactive for 10 plus years. We found there were people that had passed, people that had left the state years ago. Like, why am I getting this right now? So when you go on outreach to inactive voters, you're going to find the whole smorgasbord of situations. So be careful what you're going after. Yeah, it's true. And it was a tricky thing for us to say, okay, we're going to send out all these notices and have to answer the questions of why did I get this notice? Well, Secretary of State.
So on the Deschutes County website, it lists 154,000 something.
Michael updated it this morning, so it's even fresher.
Okay, I'll go check, because I'm always updating. Yeah. So, does that count? That's only active voters?
Only active.
Okay.
Yep.
So ballpark, how many in active ballpark?
154,000 something.
Not inactive. I don't know.
Oh, you're
15, I'm not sure. I don't know.
We can keep you.
Send me an email. I would love to spend all afternoon. I really would. Sorry. Yes. No.
Can felons vote in Oregon or after they get out?
Another great question.
Can felons vote? Yes, if they're out.
That's right.
You can't vote if you're incarcerated.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Son,
He's one of us.
Yeah, awesome. That's perfect.
He's not a felon.
Yeah. He's like, I know this person. No, we don't know. Yeah. You're out. You can vote. Yeah. Unless you're incarcerated. Yeah. And any questions for the road? Or? Well, I appreciate your time, and there's one other piece, and I was hoping Susie would be here because I don't know the answer to this, but countywide initiatives are not passed here very often. So I just wanted to give you kudos on the effort. I know it was a Herculean effort. It's a lot of signatures, and for whatever effort it is, that anybody circulating something like that and getting it through the quick finish line is impressive. So congratulations for that. See, I saw you all out there in the parks and the farmers markets and everything. So congratulations.